which the reason why I say that, because it kind of set the tone for my whole life and demeanor at that point, because I was so committed, and I really didn't reach my goal, but I did, and it was really where I learned that it's more about the process than it is really about the medal or the trophy. But they don't really teach that in wrestling. Right. It's like all or none. It's like the you're either the winner or you're the loser type of thing. And they do, one of the cliches that you always hear is that, this is going to help you way down the line when you have a job, all this discipline and all that type of stuff. So when I got done with undergrad and got into PT school, I was always kind of a go-getter, and pushing ahead, running some extra laps on a lot of things that I was doing. Right. So in the PT profession, I started to realize that I wanted to do the same thing. So I did this really specialized training after I got done with PT school. The whole way through PT school, I was really confused, kind of didn't know what I wanted to do. There were so many cool things, from the orthopedics to the sports medicine. And then I was really interested in the neuroscience side. So I spent a couple of years doing, independent studies and things, looking into the neurological side of things. But that side of things, people just don't really get better. Right. So it would be like going to jujitsu practice every day and you just don't get better. You're actually getting worse. Right. And so it's a hard population to work with in terms of
feel
PT.
that today.
Yes, a lot of people do feel that way. Right.
I had a rough class this morning, man. I did a 7:30 class and I was the mop. I was the nail today. And everybody else was the hammer.
and you have that, and so, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and basically you hope it's not a train, but that if you keep showing up, that your skills are going to improve, hopefully, anyways. I think everybody eventually reaches a ceiling, but you can still find other things to get better with. But that population doesn't really get better. So I was struggling. I was in an inner turmoil about, which direction I was going to go. I had a clinician kind of say, give me this pearl that really, when you're looking at humans and how they function, everything is neurological, right? So basically, as I went into my sports and orthopedics, I took that with me going, okay, there's this huge neurological component that we're not talking about in sports medicine and orthopedics because we're looking at things in this structural manner. And then basically right at that time, I got involved with this mentor, and he basically said the same thing. He was one of the best physical therapists in the country for sports medicine. And he was like, well, the difference we do here with my system is that we focus on the nervous system with sports and orthopedics. So at that time, it wasn't, a really common thing to think about that. So I ended up at the University of Cincinnati working with the Cincinnati Bengals. I was there for about 3 years. Yep. It was a big upgrade because I had went to this, really blue collar town, blue collar school, limited resources, went to a small Division II school. We barely had an athletic training department. We didn't have a strength and conditioning coach at my college, which is what I ended up doing in grad school. I had a grad assistantship while I was in grad school. Mm-hmm. So, and I was actually one of the assistant coaches for the wrestling team, and I was ahead of the strength and conditioning for our team. So because I had an exercise science degree. So then basically I went to the University of Cincinnati again. When I got done with that program, I started realizing about my student loans and life. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do here? So, the further that I looked into it, it made more sense for me to start looking and go into private practice. And I had actually had a roommate at the time when I was in Cincinnati who was getting his MBA at Xavier, and he was all about SEO, which was the funny thing. This is 2006.
Yeah. That's
so
early.
Yeah. So he's actually a good friend of mine still, and he already exited with one of his companies called Fire Gang. It was a digital marketing company for dentists. And he was way ahead of the curve. So he kind of, pushed me in that direction. And then my brother has his MBA from Pitt, and my best friend has his MBA from Carnegie Mellon, and he's a big finance guy. So at the time, these guys were pushing me, especially because we had just gotten our doctorates. Number one, they were pushing me going, the doctorate's a stupid thing for PTs to have because it's bad branding, which I couldn't even understand at the time. Now I understand what they were talking about. It's confusing, like we were talking about at the beginning, right? And our profession profession is very fragmented. We have 9 board specialties. So there's orthopedics, neurological, sports, cardiovascular, electrophysiology, all of these things. So anytime that you're going to encounter a physical therapist, you're going to get all these different ideas and different paradigms because we're so specialized and niched. But our profession doesn't really do a great job of thinking about how the branding works.